Richard at Beyond Marathon. I'm going to take you through a course preview here today. So here is your 100-kilometer course. I've marked on here all of the checkpoints, and in a couple of minutes I'll switch on some distance markers just to give you a little bit of perspective. So quite a lot goes into organising routes like this. We have to go through various permission hoops and sort out route changes, building work. So the route changed a number of times since the 18 months since we've recently planned it. I've even made a very minor tweak today, just at the request of one of the landowners, which I'll show you a little bit later. And as a result, we've created a new GPX file for a couple of different reasons, which you will find attached to this the same information that's shared this video with you as well. So let's jump down into the route itself. I'm going to flip over to one of the other mapping views in a second, just to give you a flavour of where we're starting and registering. Okay, we're going to be registering at a location just here, which is a church, or the building associated with the church. And then you're going to be taking a 5 or 10 minute walk. It's about 600 meters down to the pier. So here's the famous Brighton pier. I'm going to get you to stand all outside and unfurl a great big long banner. And then we're going to set you off. Now, because there's a lot of traffic lights and roads, even though it's going to be early in the morning, we're going to run you along the lower promenade. If you don't know Brighton, there's kind of two levels, up where the vehicles are at the top, and then there's a lower area here in this section. So what we'll do is get you to run along the lower promenade, and then there's a little zigzag path that takes you up onto the top. And then ultimately you're going to turn left off the main Marine Parade and start to head out of the city itself. So you're going to take a quick right turn left here, and then just by Brighton College you're taking a right and left and going onto some trail. So you can see here, as you go along this path, you go along a little kind of woodland trail. If you accidentally miss this right turn, it doesn't greatly matter. You can turn up this one, this one, this one, whichever one you like. Ultimately, you're just going to get up onto this wide track along there, which ultimately takes you up along Brighton Racecourse, as you can see. So here's the horse racing course. You're running alongside the area that the horses come along, following that right the way around, and the race course actually is either side of this. There's a road that goes right the way through here, some traffic lights, quite a busy road, this Warren Road. So you'll go across over to the road, turn right, and then you're going to follow this great big wide track. I'm going to add the distance way marks on at this point. So you will have done 2.5 miles, 4 kilometers here, and you've got about a 200-meter climb over the first 5 miles. Let me zoom out a little bit and also change the map just to be an Ordnance Survey type of view. Okay, so it's the same map, just with the OS view. So once you've turned right here, you're going to go onto a byway, which you can technically drive a car along. It goes right the way along this Drove Road, and then you're going to cross out, and this then turns into a grassy type area, which vehicles will not be on. You go up past the big transmitter, which is the top of the climb. So you've gained, as you can see here, almost 200 meters from sea level, and you're pretty much going to lose the vast majority of that on a great big climb on the way down. You're going to join the South Downs Way at this point here. So this is the South Downs Way, these green diamond shape. You might think, why aren't we doing that? Quite simply, that path doesn't actually exist, even though it shows it on the map. Whilst there is a little stile here, the path actually just runs parallel and goes along, so there was no value to doing that. Just head along this until you see the South Downs Way sign, and do make sure you head in that direction. You notice here 8 kilometers, so you're at the 5-mile mark when you join the South Downs Way, and you're on that for the next 7k. Nice big downhill. You can go right the way down to the A27. Do make sure you go right the way alongside and cross the bridge which goes over here. Don't be tempted to run across the dual carriageway here. Not a good idea. You're going to go up the well-named long hill all the time on the South Downs Way. Continue along. There's a couple little twists and turns, but it's very well signposted. Finally, you've got this left-hand turn, and you'll notice you've gone now up to 16 kilometers. So you've got about 6k or so in total from the. So you got onto the South Downs Way when you were at 8 kilometers. So you've gone 8k, which is 5 miles more on the South Downs Way, and then you're going to drop off this narrow little track here. So this is the ridge of the South Downs Way for those that are familiar. So a lot of the kind of weather and mist and fog often gets trapped in this area. When you drop off this ridge, it tends to be a bit of a nicer microclimate. You're going to drop down into Plumpton. Important to say at this point in time, there is no visitor parking, supporters, or anything like that at any of our checkpoints. They're not allowed at the checkpoints or in them or around them. This is an outdoor place anyway. There is no parking, not even for us. We've got to drop off equipment here and park elsewhere. So there is nowhere whatsoever to park. Don't have any of your supporters meeting you anywhere in this area because they're not going to find anywhere at all to park. They must meet you further away. There's various pubs, car parks, all sorts of things along the route. Once you've been through CP checkpoint one, you'll then make your way back onto the public right of way across a great big grassy area, and then you're going to go past the agricultural college up to the point where, let me just see here, there is actually, you can't see it very well, but there's a left turn which takes you up to a kind of septic tank, water treatment tank. Just opposite there, you'll turn, then immediately go over a stile onto the field, which you're then following one single track, so you can't go wrong. Just following the single footpath right the way through until you get to the end of the road, turn left, and you're into this little village here called Street. Just be careful not to head off to the right there. Whilst you can do that, and you could head over this way, when we recce'd, it was just a little bit marshy, a little so uncomfortable to run on. So instead, we've brought you around the back of the church onto a hard standing track, which will ultimately, you can drive right the way along this, or the farm owners and house owners up here can drive right the way along this. You head right the way along across over the ford and under the railway bridge until you get onto a lane at the very end. Now, let me just back up just a touch here and just zoom out. This is where we've made one of the changes. So originally, the route was going to be turning left here and going through Blackbrook Wood and West and Gallops Wood and Westwood. But given that the weather this week is still a little bit shaky, I'm not convinced it's going to completely dry out. Now, you can go that way with the original GPX file if you want to. It's prettier, it's a nicer route, whereas what we're suggesting is basically using a very quiet country lane, which is tarmac. So you're going to make slightly quicker progress. The distance is neither here nor there. There's a few hundred kilometers, a few hundred meters in it. But if you want a nice soft trail, which may have some wet patches, by all means go there. But just for the sake of speed and efficiency, we're suggesting you actually go straight the way along here. It's about it's about 3 kilometers in total from here to here, so it's not that far. Ultimately, you'll join up with the route again, which was at this point here, and you're joining for quite a long time. You're either joining or stepping on and off the Sussex border path. So this is actually a road anyway. So you go along this country lane, you'll turn right and head through these woods here, and these should be pretty much dry by now, so they're quite pleasant, those woods. And again, you're on the Sussex border path, and you're going to head right the way into Skeins Hill. So you'll step out into the middle of Skeins Hill at this point in time. There's a little pub on your right hand side. Then you're more or less going to go straight the way across to find our checkpoint. So there's a recreation, a kind of green area down here. We'll have some vehicles parked in the end. Once you've visited the checkpoint, you can either go this way or that way back onto what's initially a very wide and really nice trail that goes down through the woods here. That's going to take you right the way through, and you can see here this is also the Sussex Ouse Valley Way, right the way through down into Linfield. Very first time I recorded it, I just missed this turning, ended up on the road and walked around here. It doesn't really matter which way you go, and then you want to take that left back onto trail. I'm going to zoom out at this point in time. So this is just, again, a single path goes right the way up. And at this point in time here, there's a brand new housing development. So there's lots of new houses here. When you turn left, which is a great big wide track you can drive along, you go down and up into this little valley. You go around these couple of farms, and just as you head past here, you go through a little go through a little gate and a turning. Follow it right the way round. You'll see here it turns from a green path to an orange. That just means it's a permissive path, which means the landowner's allowed use. And when I ran through this, probably about 3 or 4 months ago last, there was a couple of trees which had fallen down. I don't doubt that they're probably still the same. They're easy just to go around or go underneath. There was just to note there's a couple of fallen trees down here. You turn right very briefly on this old train line. It's not really recognisable much as a train line anymore, this dismantled railway, because it's mostly trees all along there. You're only on it for about 250 metres. Then you're turning left, and heading straight back along this track again. There are a couple of lefts and rights, so just do make sure you're following the same direction right the way through to Ardingly. Once you're in Ardingly, we made a nice route decision to take you through somewhere a little bit prettier. There are other routes, other events which use this route here, which goes along this road across the reservoir. But instead, we took you up past the south of England Centre and Little London and brought you down into this valley across this pretty little footbridge by the Royal Botanic Gardens, and then back up the other side of the valley and turning right. Initially, this is a tarmac lane, which ultimately turns back into a forest track as you head right the way through. Turn left here just before Worth Abbey. Worth Abbey isn't really a very historic area. It's I think the building's less than 100 years old. It's a very small, pretty much nondescript Benedictine abbey. Then you're going to quick right then left and skip right the way through back into the forest, and ultimately you're going to come out onto a road at this point in time. You're turning right along this train line, which again is the Sussex border path, and I'll have a to zoom in at this point in time. There's a car park here where our next checkpoint is. This is the last outdoors car park, which we're referring to as Crawley. It's not really Crawley, it's on the outskirts. But you will visit this checkpoint and then continue on. It almost looks like you're doing a U-turn here. And the answer is, why are we doing a U-turn and not just doing that? This particular road is quite fast. This particular section of the road is quite fast with no pavement. So even though you're on the same piece of road here, this piece of road is far slower. We did make some endeavours to try and get the landowner to allow us to use this section here, but they recently put up signs saying no public right of way. And even though it's a tarmac lane, the Little Rowfant estate clearly not very keen on allowing people to use what would be a rather safer route. So as it is, we're going to follow the official public right of way. We did contact another landowner who owned the Coma Group, who own the Rowfant House Grade 2 listed building here, and we were speaking to them about this and establishing they weren't the landowner. One thing they did say was they'd rather we did not follow the official public right of way that goes around there, and instead you basically come into the grounds and cut clean across the grass. So I've adjusted the GPX to do that. Now it's a request at the end of the day. Public right of way does go straight through and around the back, so no one can stop you from doing that. They've just politely asked, would we mind going that way? So I've acquiesced to that request and amended the GPX accordingly. So that is the second of the changes that I've mentioned, second of the two changes in there. Beyond that, you're back on the Sussex border path again, and continuing right the way through to Copthorne, crossing through, and then you've got a little bit of a country lane, very fast section now. So there is use of country lane, again use of country lane, quiet country lane here, right the way through, to here. Crossroads again, still on country lane, so a good few kilometres you're on quiet country roads for there to pick up some speed, and you're going to cut through. This is Goggins Lane, if I remember rightly, or Cogman's Lane, that's right. And you're going to cut through and then left. And at this point in time, the tarmac lane ends, and you're on a byway, which again is a drivable road by 4x4 vehicles right the way through to the end here. One point to note, there are car parks and various things and pubs all along the way, so this is one of many potential spots that crews can potentially meet you away from the CPs. Anyway, back to the route. So you continue along, lots of kind of farmland area at this point in time. Tambridge border path this is. You're very briefly alongside the motorway, the M23, if I remember rightly. And before you come just before into Bletchingley and the first of the indoor checkpoints. No point getting your cameras out for Bletchingley Castle. Doesn't matter which way you go around here, actually. It's just a disappointing green mound of nothing these days, so there's not much to see at Bletchingley Castle. Apologise to those who live in Bletchingley, but it's not worth going to see. One thing that is worth of note is our checkpoint is here. So you're going to have to do a short out and back along the road to the community centre village hall, which is just there. So just be careful as you approach. It's quite possible you might see people disappearing up here and not realise they've just done an out and back to the checkpoint. So just be aware you are doing a short couple of 100 metres along the road into the community hall and then back on yourself and back onto this enclosed track, which takes you through. Let me zoom right the way out. You could go through to the end, or you could go there. It doesn't really matter, but ultimately you'll get to this point here. Along the trail, turn right, and then you're going to follow this right the way under the M25. Now, the M25 is always the sign for me that you are heading back into London and civilization. Now, what you will find is when you get to this point here, you're just about to climb up onto the North Downs Way Ridge very briefly. There's a very steep climb. It's at a 100-meter pull, and we have drawn it on the most commonly used route, which is slightly less steep. We have no objection if you want to hack your way right the way up that ridiculously steep hill. You're not going to get extra points. It's slightly shorter, but I think you'll take one look at it, much like I did, and think, no, we'll just go around there. So you're going to climb up onto the North Downs Way. So this is the North Downs Way. You're on it for the flashiest of flashes, just this short section here. So don't start following the North Down Way off that way. You're going to very quickly take your first right onto the next track. It may well be labelled circular the Downland Circular. I don't recall seeing that on the waymark, but it might have been there. Onwards across the next road, and then you're going to come along into the Happy Valley and ultimately find your way onto Farthing Down or Fairdean Downs. You can either run along the road or beside the road, or go alongside the bottom of the ridge there. It doesn't really make any difference. You'll be on the London Loop for a little while now. An earlier version of the GPX did bring you along the official public right-of-way, which goes over South Coulston Station, but to be quite honest, it just added time and not a great deal of value. There is a pavement all the way down here that goes underneath the train line to this roundabout, so I would suggest just go down there. It is faster. Around the roundabout, you will be crossing over as the A237 and the A23. You'll have just got across, and then you're back on the London Loop again. Well, you're still on the London Loop, I should say. There are London Loop waymarks, which you'll see, and you're going to leave it very briefly at here and rejoin it a little bit later, because we bring you into our final checkpoint, which is Banstead. So you're going to go across the fields here and then pick up this lane. So you're in a housing area right the way through until you get to the Banstead Hall here, the community hall, which is at that point in time. So it's only a tiny little out and back of 50 meters or so. And once you've been to the final indoor, the final checkpoint there, you will then return, and you're going to cross a couple of busy roads here, so do take care. We've tried to bring you the safest route that we can do. You're rejoining the London Loop, and there is a crossing point here. That is not a safe crossing point, and there isn't anywhere safer up either, so your best point is the one that we have picked. And then back on the London Loop, very much urban now, through housing estates, and you are continuing to follow that London Loop. Technically it goes round there, but this way is just as quick. You will then, let me just zoom out a touch more. Again, another potential point here, 90k, 10k before the end. Lots of places to meet you, obviously, once you're in London for your cruise. And then we're going to head very much through streets and houses until you get right the way through to the road here. Now, this is the A3. This is a super busy road. There, not quite see it on there, but this is an underpass. You go underneath the underpass out the other side, and then you essentially are making your way through from here to the Thames. So you can make your way right the way through using our GPX file, which is for the most part using the London Loop. The London Loop takes an odd little dog leg around there, which we've spared you, so you can just follow the road right the way through until you get to the Thames. You're only on the Thames for just over a couple of kilometres, and then you will reach our finish line here. We actually hope to bring you in at this point in time. There is a back gate which we have arranged with the venue to open, so you probably won't have to run just past it and then back in. You should be able to trot right the way into the venue here. Hopefully that has explained the route, and you've got you've got a good idea of what to expect. One thing to say is, because we've picked the route the way it is, because there are lots of roads in this area which are very busy. Now, originally when this was a road race up until about 2004, 2005. After that point in time, it got very difficult to close the roads, expensive policing. The roads were incredibly busy, and it became not viable anymore. So that's why we've got it as a trail route. And the reason we've picked the routes we have is because even though there looks like there's potentially sometimes faster parallel roads, I can promise you that the roads in this part of the country are narrow country roads with a lot of them have got no pavement and they have extremely fast traffic. So whilst you might think, why on earth have we're doing a strange little dog leg around a permissive path around here rather than using this road or this road, it's for precisely that reason. These roads are busy, there's no pavement, they're not safe. So whilst it's slightly slow progress in sections like this, they're there for a very good reason. We're trying to keep you safe all the time, and hopefully you will enjoy the trails. So overall, as you can see from here, there is around about 1500 meters of ascent. You're more or less starting at the same elevation that you're or ending at. There's a little couple of lumps and bumps in between, and but gradually you have a nice overall descent of a couple of hundred meters to finish your effort off. Okay, we look forward to seeing everybody at the event. Thank you very much.